myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Buckley. I'm the Director of Marketing at Araya Solutions, and certainly want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think you're really going to find this to be an incredibly interesting and valuable webinar. It's delivered by Javier Barron, Araya's Director of AI and Innovation. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. First, I want to let you know that the slide deck for today's webinar will be available for anyone that would like a copy. Just shoot me an email at sbuckley@arayasolutions.com, and I'll be happy to share it with you. Also, there'll be time allotted for Q&A toward the end of the presentation. Please use the Q&A function on the webinar interface. Should be right in front of you. You can submit any questions as you think of them, and we'll get to them toward the end of the presentation. So now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Javi. Javi?
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for joining us today. I know we're all pretty busy nowadays, so taking the time out to hear me speak for the next hour or so, I definitely appreciate it. One of the things I want everyone to get out of this is to be able to have a starting point for you or for your organization. The topics we're going to discuss here is I'll give a brief introduction into who we are, Araya, as a company, and some of the things that we've been working on in the AI space, and also touch on some other things that we do outside of artificial intelligence. A little background for myself is I've been working in the AI space. I'd like to say I'm one of the senior people there because it's really only been around for, I think this is the 4th year now where it's been in general availability for organizations. But myself and some of the other leaders here at Araya have been working with call it AI for years now. Back then AI was seen as automation, hyper automation, workflow automation, and we were definitely in that space and helped kind of grow with the technology as it's been exponentially growing with the release of generative AI. So we'll take you down a little bit of a path of what we've seen in that space, some do's and don'ts, some things to look out for, and then hopefully lay out a path for you to follow to have the most impact of AI in your organization, and really to just have a clear path forward on where you should go and what you should be doing. Now, one of the things that we'll focus on as well is the traditional playbook of what I think everybody followed when AI was first introduced. From there, we'll take you on a little bit of a journey to show you what our playbook now looks like. We took the things that worked from the traditional playbook and made some adjustments, and you'll see those adjustments shining bright in a few of our slides in the form of envisioning and prioritization of use cases. And that'll be a bulk of the presentation because of how important that is in your AI journey. We'll wrap up the presentation with some key takeaways, some statistics, and also some things you can take for yourself to your organization to help jumpstart this journey. Now, a little bit about Araya. We're an IT services company, full service. We do everything from licensing to actual professional services. We are a global company. We support under the sun 24/7. The great thing about Araya, the 5 years that I've been here, is I've seen that we approach things on bleeding edge, right? We're not scared to take on that next technical challenge. And we have, I believe it's about 90% of our staff is actual technical staff. So we're very focused on that kind of approach. And good thing is too, the people that started this company over 20 years ago, David and Dan, the two owners, they still very much own and operate the company. So we like to say we outsmall the bigs is the term that we use. We're headquartered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but again, we have offices all over the U.S. and in the Philippines, so we can support anyone and anywhere. Now let's get into the good stuff. This is really a precursor to the playbook. It's something that I like to start off with because by now, most companies, and there was a Gartner released a survey out that showed that over 90% of mid-market companies at least have some exposure to AI, and that's usually in the form of a productivity AI tool, what we like to call, the Chat GPTs, the Copilots, the Geminis of the world. So even though this is an important step for an organization when they're taking their AI journey, this is one of those that's we consider a precursor, because most users, if not the entire organization, is already exposed to this kind of technology. But just to note, because it is important, getting started with AI in your org is less about that shiny new tool and more about creating a culture where AI becomes a natural part of how your people work, right? And that's why we mention these productivity tools like Copilot, like ChatGPT, is because the users are just getting themselves familiar with this kind of technology, and that's usually the biggest step organizations have to take, is the understanding or the enablement of AI for their general users. Later in the presentation or in the webinar, we're definitely going to cover specific use cases, right, that are extend outside of the general capabilities of a Copilot or a ChatGPT. But it's important to note, because it's really transforming the way we work, with the potential to make every single employee more productive. This is a great starting point. And organizations, if you have not either adopted or at least piloted some type of productivity AI, I urge you to take that first step. Again, because it's casting a very wide net. You don't have to have much on enablement or training, because they've likely been exposed to it in their personal lives as well. I mean, if you have a personal Windows device, Microsoft volunteered everybody to put Copilot on their OS. So they're at least seeing this technology again. And if you haven't implemented this organization-wide, I urge you to do it, because you're going to get the highest impact with this kind of tool in training or getting your users familiar with this kind of technology. Now, some of the early findings and lessons learned, this is through actual projects or pilots that we've ran for companies, as well as some findings that we had with other organizations that we've worked with and talked to. And we found that the automation of tasks, things like improving accuracy of data or predictions, improving insights, those were early successes. Reason being is the automations of tasks were us sitting down with the owner of that process or workflow, documenting it, mapping it out, and then building automation towards there. So it's obvious that those were the successful AI initiatives that we went through. Very clear direction, very clear deliverables. Now, what we learned and we found challenges with, and a lot of the industry did, were with data quality issues, extending beyond summarizing, extending beyond analyzing data, kind of the things that these AI tools were built for. That's when we started running into roadblocks. And it was mainly because when AI first came out, there was a lot of hype behind it, right? And everybody wanted to jump on that hype because it seemed so promising, right? And with that came direction to tackle your data first, right? That there you ran into the data quality issues, massive amounts of databases, different tools, different systems that house and store these databases. We found that a lot of these companies were stuck in this perpetual cleansing of data or trying to make the data right before they started the initiative. And it turned out they never got to start that initiative because they were stuck on those data quality issues. Other things that we ran into early on as well too were integrations with existing systems, right? all of your users' workflows, no matter what vertical they're in, finance or IT, they have a specific system that they likely use to do their job. And when AI first came out, the AIs these OEMs were releasing, weren't quite up to par with the promises that were made. So all in all, we found that smaller is better, right? And not just focusing on a smaller sample set of data, but a smaller use case that is a quick win to get the organization introduced to AI, but also to show a success in this kind of space because it is so new. And that success, it really was highly dependent on cross-functional partnerships, right? And mainly because of the scale of where this AI or where they wanted this AI to take them. And those two insights really helped us to land on that statement that you see there with the blue background, that AI needs to be a business first approach. Well, we found that you really need to tackle AI with a business need. We saw people doing AI just to do it, right? Not having a specific business case or business need to solve for. It was just going after that shiny new object. And by making AI a business first approach, it makes it a shared mission, right? Regardless of what the business need, if it's an HR need, an IT need, a customer need. Taking that business first approach allowed you to develop actual use cases to solve for those business problems. Now, I'm going to walk you through the traditional AI playbook. Some of you might be familiar with this. This was a widely used playbook that OpenAI released, and some of the bigger OEMs as well too, like Microsoft and IBM. Now I'm going to walk you through this traditional playbook, if not for education purposes, then really for reference of where things seem to stall for organizations and where they would fall apart at the seams when going for an AI initiative or trying to implement AI in the organization. Like I mentioned before, they were stuck in this perpetual loop of either data cleansing or evaluation. The traditional AI playbook, it produced long cycles, and to be honest, it often discouraged progress. They were either stuck at the exploring stage or stuck at the planning and pilot stage. They were first, it seemed as if organizations were trying to align their technology strategy with their AI strategy, and then trying to fit where that system can help in that specific scenario. Again, they were getting stuck in that perpetual planning and pilot stage, and never really moved to implementation. And at that point, scaling projects was anchored by the ability to support these very wide, very large deployments. Again, tackling all of the organization's data into one was a monumental experience in itself. And again, it usually stifled progress. We saw that there was really no single roadmap for success when you were implementing AI. A lot of organizations try to follow this single roadmap. And again, they ran into a lot of roadblocks in that perpetual proof of concept stage. And with the acceleration of AI capabilities, you could have spent 8 months doing a specific project to prepare you for AI, and agents were released, and 8 months of data cleansing and maybe building connectors was all scrapped because now MCPs could do that, within minutes of configuration. So again, the longer time of implementing AI initiatives, it doesn't lend well to the exponential growth and capabilities of AI. Now we're going to dive into Araya's adjusted playbook, or our AI playbook. And like a traditional playbook, it led organizations down a path of complexity, right? I think Araya was actually one of those organizations early on, and that's really how we learned from our mistakes. We took the same path of massive LLMs, you know, of consolidating all of an organization's data into a single data project. But through our experience and our research, we really found that a deliberate and phased approach to implementing AI is really critical to success. By launching smaller controlled deployments, you can fine tune performance, you can establish best practices, and you can pivot a lot easier if and when features or functionality is released with AI. And with these smaller controlled deployments, we're able to gather feedback and implement feedback a lot easier, which we'll talk about a little bit more with our MVPs and our implementation phase. But this approach, it not only mitigated risk by accelerating adoption, but it demonstrated value early on. And it really turned on organizations' perception of just conceptualizing AI to actually using it, you know, with day-to-day use cases. So the goal of this entire playbook is to build momentum in implementing AI, and doing that with consumable chunks, right? Smaller use case deployments, agent deployments, and not focusing on one massive AI project. Now, not to say that we can't work our way up to that point, but we could break down that massive AI projects into those consumable chunks and work our way up to, you know, the final goal of having, you know, a specific organization, you know, meeting metrics of how to use AI, or the amount of AI that they're using. You know, as I mentioned in our lessons learned, you know, developing use cases that solve genuine business problems is at the core of this playbook. You know, we start with defining and prioritizing, and it's there's no secret sauce to that either. You know, it's getting down to the nitty gritty of the organization and finding out where there's business needs or problems for AI to solve. And you know, starting with that business need is crucial because it helps pinpoint those use cases, and those use cases are going to become very important. You'll see in the next few slides, because it's those specific use cases that are going to help drive meaningful impact, right? It's going to help drive visibility in the company for tools like this, and it's going to help drive support, and more critically, getting the resources to support these AI initiatives. I keep mentioning that perpetual proof of concept because we saw a lot of organizations being stuck in that. This helps avoid it. You can scale these initiatives from solving a very small business need, very small use case. You can scale that functionality and those business needs to other problems in the organization, because through this quick ramp up of these smaller low hanging fruit, we're also establishing best practices, right? We're also identifying data sources. We're also going through compliance and governance establishment. So all of the core things that you're going to need for any type of AI initiative will be done in that short amount of time. Now, the envisioning session is very important. You know, as we move on to this stage, you focus your shift from prioritizing those use cases to actually mapping them to business opportunities. And we'll spend a couple slides coming up on the envisioning session, so I won't spend too much time there. But I'll jump to the MVP and implementing stage. For those of you that don't know, MVP stands for minimum viable product. And this is very important in our AI playbook because it's the quickest way to provide something tangible for organizations to use, right? Again, not getting in this perpetual proof of concept stage, we're actually giving you a product that meets, you know, the minimum requirements that we gathered in our envisioning session. The MVP allows businesses to test their product ideas in real market environments, and it helps validate genuine demand for that product as well. What this MVP does is it reduces the time to market. We develop a full-featured product, or developing a full-featured product can be time-consuming. So again, we find those minimum requirements that their organization can say, this is good. This will meet our minimum requirements for a product, and from there we can scale to other essential features. We found that by doing this, it's cost effective for the customer. I'm sure quite a bit of organizations have invested either time or resources or money into some AI projects that didn't come to fruition. So taking this approach is more cost effective. And then, of course, the most important is we're able to gather feedback during this MVP stage, so that when we're bringing this product to production, it's meeting the actual user's needs, and making sure that they understand the product. And from there, the last two stages, the scaling and realizing, because of the way we're designing these products, scaling is a lot easier. Adding a data source, adding a function, adding a automated agent can easily be added to that product. And if it's not a feature update, what we like to call, then we just start back off at the envisioning session, and we treat it as another use case, and we form another MVP. And at that point, we've been measuring. We've return on investment. We've established what we deem as good, right, to the organization and to the project. So the whole realizing and measuring value of the company is already done in the process of prioritizing, envisioning, and in the MVP. So that's actually one of the easier stages of this playbook, is the realizing phase, because we've already done all of the work in the previous stages. Now we're going to jump into the actual first step. The journey begins with this first step, and it was this first step that we saw on the last slide. We called it define and prioritize stage. A lot of people get a little nervous because this is, again, the first step in a journey, and getting started is always, the hardest thing to do. But not to worry. This is as simple as it sounds, mainly because your business needs come from the main drivers of your business, which are your people. Attaching your AI initiatives to a business need allows you to identify these use cases, by simply going to your users or going to the leaders of your organization. During this stage, we focus on parts of your business that can be immediately improved with AI. Starting with business needs is pivotal, because it helps pinpoint the actual physical use cases that are best equipped for meaningful impact. One way to do this is to look at AI, and we usually start with this statement because it gets the hamster running on the wheel, but is think of AI as a way to create a super assistant for your workforce. This super assistant, it never gets tired, it never loses focus, and it's always available when you need it. You can flex this assistant across many tasks, across different employee skills, and one of the easiest ways to identify those is to look at repetitive, low-value tasks. Every job, doesn't matter what you're doing, if you're director of AI innovation or you're running a marketing organization, every job involves tedious manual tasks that really take people away from the more strategic work, or from the skill sets that really shine why they were hired for that position. And these mindless tasks, they slow productivity, and in some cases they make work more frustrating, less fulfilling. So starting with those repetitive and low value tasks, and asking those questions of your employees in your organization, is a great start. And it's small things like summarizing meeting notes, so looking for trends, updating spreadsheets, summarizing notes, right? All these things are stuff that's spread across all jobs, and that AI can make more efficient. So, just asking yourself, I do this every day. Every time I do something I find annoying, I ask myself, how can I not have to do this again? And that's usually a good use case for AI and the functionality of AI. Some other examples are, skill bottlenecks, or navigating ambiguity. Knowledge workers, knowledge work often involves, open-ended challenges. AI can act as the middle ground for that. It could help generate ideas. It can help analyze data for you. So again, these are all great places to start, right? That first step. And again, it's as easy as taking these kind of questions back to your team. Ask your team to list scenarios or tasks where maybe they struggle to get started or reach roadblocks. Maybe they spend a lot of time doing manual work. Those kinds of things can easily get use case surfaced up to the top. And when you ask these questions of people in your organization, and their answer is, "Oh, I don't know," you know what the great thing is, or the great response to that is? Tell them to pick their favorite productivity AI tool, Copilot, ChatGPT, and prompt in there, "I am insert role. I work for this company. We recently implemented Copilot, ChatGPT. What's the best use case for my role?" And it'll give you at least a top 10 list of use cases for that specific role in that specific organization. Now, I have these use cases up on the screen. There's some that we've identified and categorized in functional verticals, through either research or, actual agents or tools that we've built for customers. So I'm going to leave these use cases up here. You could read through them. But I'm going to talk a little bit about this stage in identifying use cases, because this is the most important stage. Choosing the right use case to move forward with can have great weight and impact on your organization's perception of AI, and really how it's going to move forward with it. We've seen a lot of companies, choose the wrong use case, right? Maybe something that they thought was a great use case and it turned out not to be. They invested months, resource, time, money. So again, this is one of the most important stages of the playbook. And we've developed a formula that really measures impact and effort. And we're focused really on the high return on investment use cases, but we want quick wins, right? Mentioning earlier that starting small and scaling up is the way to go. So finding quick wins with strong impact and low effort on that chart is often the best place to build momentum. And the ability to measure those outcomes is key as well when we're prioritizing use cases. Now, there are, standard KPIs that everybody looks at when they're measuring return on investment on these use cases. But what we found, the most impactful is hours saved. And it's really the most tangible KPI that you can measure with AI, because most of what AI is doing for organizations today is in the form of automation or agent work, right? So it's really in efficiency and productivity. So the faster and more accurate a person can do a task, we can easily measure those by hours saved. And depending on what tool you're using, if you're building versus buying, you can easily implement those kinds of KPIs to measure the return on the investment on these specific use cases. Now, I'm going to spend a few minutes on if you remember, the envisioning stage of our AI playbook. And I'm going to spend a little bit time describing this envisioning step, because even though it's a relatively small step, in that some of our envisioning sessions were consolidated into 2 days, right? Some of them, the company elected to have longer sessions, at, a week, 2 weeks. But, it being a relatively small step in the grand scheme of your AI journey, um, the outcome of this step is long lasting. So some of the objectives that we like to uh, highlight in these envisioning sessions is, number one is strategic alignment. We mentioned earlier about cross-functional uh, alignment with organizations. It's important to get all leaders on board across the organization, if not to be on board to implement AI, but to just understand it, understand the capabilities, and really help to prioritize not just the goals of the organization as a whole for AI, but the individual goals in each vertical. Aligning those cross-functional leaders led to a lot more successful implementation, a lot more buy-in with organizations. So we focus that first and foremost in our envisioning session. Second, it's what we've been, the theme of our playbook is the quick win identification, right? Tackling those low-hanging fruit use cases that are high impact, low effort, and bring in measurable value, within 3 months, right? And that's 3 months after the MVP has been released. So in this envisioning session, we help identify those quick wins. Now, once we have those use cases identified, we look at impact versus effort, right? And that's really where we get into the weeds of the potential return on investment, right? And we're looking at efficiency, we're looking at increase in productivity, right? And if the opportunity arises, and of course, AI technology is changing every day with the emergence of agents, that ROI can look very enticing once we get into the details of those use cases. Now, the fourth thing that we focus on is risk mitigation. So, we don't completely ignore the things that the traditional AI playbook had, like focusing on data, compliance, making sure there's data readiness prior to getting started. But being it's a smaller sample size, it's a shorter time to the product, right? But we're still doing the risk mitigation. We're identifying the data, we're identifying the talent, which is the users of the actual process, or of the data. And then we also identify governance gaps. It's usually in this risk mitigation stage where we help to start establishing the foundations for governance, for security, and things that you can take forward with the next AI initiative. And last but not least, the final objective of these envisioning sessions is to actually give you an actionable roadmap. With all of these use cases that we identify and doing the impact versus effort exercise, we're able to implement a plan with clear investment requirements and an actual path forward. So you're not stuck in that perpetual planning stage. You're given an actionable roadmap. And the reason for all of this is to focus on the experience of the organization or the participants of these envisioning sessions. Being able to see it is important in our eyes. And with these envisioning sessions, we come ready with demos and industry specific AI use cases, either that we've developed or that our OEMs have shared and developed. But that way you get a better understanding of how this technology can impact you specifically, right? Even though we're focusing on the organization as a whole and their experience with this envisioning session, it trickles down to the actual person in that envisioning session, because their AI use cases, processes, workflows will be a lot different than the person next to them. From there, within the experience, we shape it and we score it, right? We identify the business challenges, how these use cases can be applied or can be solved through some kind of AI technology, and then we prioritize for you. One of the important things that comes of this for the participant in their experience is being able to identify any potential risks, right? And it's great to hear from different organizations on what they deem as a risk. It could just be the scarcity of AI, of maybe taking my job. It could be ethical considerations. It could be compliance related. But we stress test it. We stress test that use case so that any of these roadblocks that could stall a project down the road are identified early on and tackled early on. And we found that during these sessions, again, the thing that was probably most obvious that the organization thought is a AI use case turns out to be probably the worst use case because of that stress test portion of it. We just identified too many potential risks or data access issues that would have stalled a project, down the line. And before you made that investment of time and money and resources, that's the point of the experiences, to identify those early. And from there, it's selling it. We help you develop a compelling business use case to take to your boss or take to the organization, and with every tangible ROI associated with it. Now, this framework that we have here, we established mainly because during these envisioning sessions, we got the same questions asked, and we found that we can categorize them into 4 different areas, because it was pretty universal across the board when we ran these sessions. The first one being business impact and value, right? The 3 bullet points you see there. Does it address a key business challenge, right? The number 1 focus of our playbook. Can it improve efficiency, revenue, customer experience, right? That's the ROI portion of it. And more importantly, is this scalable, right? We saw a lot of organizations buy into that next shiny tool or object, and it can only be applied to one single use case. So we want to make sure that what we're implementing can be scaled, and to different processes or functions. Now, the second category is tackling feasibility and readiness, right? And during our prioritization, these are important questions because we have to make sure that one, the business processes is documented, because we're going to be mimicking that business process with some sort of AI technology. So that is one of the important steps to take. And the last 2 are more on the actual use case. Is it a high value problem? Is it a high frequency problem? And quite frankly, we ask questions of, does the organization have the skills to support an AI implementation? And that might be in the form of training, of enablement, or simply of getting the organization started with a productivity AI tool, like we mentioned earlier. So we make sure we assess the readiness of the organization to use tools like this during our prioritization process. Going to number 3, measure in time, right? So this is finding out how we measure impact of that specific initiative, identifying risks, and again, is it a quick win or is it a long-term investment? We want to aim for those quick wins, but that doesn't mean that we'll ignore the long-term investments. We'll just work our way towards those. Last but not least, and probably more important one for the finance people in this room, but we identified quantifiable financials, right? Everybody has different goals when it comes to their financials. If you don't have those in terms of AI, we can help establish those. But it's asking questions like, how soon do you want this AI to deliver value, right? What are the projected cost savings, the revenue gains? we help identify those as well in the visioning session. And then what are the KPIs you want to track, right? We have our standard blanket KPIs that we mentioned earlier, like productivity and efficiency measured by hours saved, but you might have other KPIs for your organization that we can apply to the prioritization. Now, this is a very important step, defining success, because it's measuring what matters. And before implementing AI, it's crucial to assess the organization's readiness and adoption. You know, as we mentioned earlier in the previous slide, this involves understanding the workforce and their ability to adopt AI. Again, that prerequisite we mentioned earlier, some type of productivity AI tool can definitely push this readiness metrics to the point where your workforce is ready. But we can help identify other areas to improve the readiness metrics. And again, it's focusing on employee sentiment. You know, we gauge employee motivation, confidence, and value of AI through feedback. Right? We gather feedback. We gather surveys during these sessions. Another metric for readiness is technical eligibility. So we assess not only the employees of the company's technical eligibility, but also the readiness of the applications and the tech stack that they use, because they're likely going to be integrations across the board somewhere down the path of your AI journey. Another metrics is skill level. So we help to evaluate existing skill levels, and again, we identify those training needs to ensure that employees are ready to take on these kinds of tools. Now, once AI is implemented, it's essential to monitor these things, right? Monitor the adoption across the organization. Adoption metrics help in understanding AI usage. And if you've implemented some kind of productivity AI tool, I'll use Copilot as an example. These tools allow you to track usage patterns, frequency, intensity of AI usage, you know, where it's being used across the applications. I use Copilot as an example, but other productivity tools have the same usage metrics. ChatGPT Plus, as well as Enterprise, has those analytics as well. But adoption metrics, again, are important when measuring what matters. And that feedback loop, of course, whether it's done through communication behaviors or through automated purposes, it's very important when trying to measure what matters for that AI initiative. Now, last but not least is measuring the impact of AI and the outcomes. And this is going to be, you know, various levels. We mentioned earlier through productivity gains, right? Through employee experience, you know, evaluating changes in employee satisfaction, employee engagement overall after AI has been implemented. Business outcomes is another great way for measurement, you know, assessing the impact of AI on, you know, revenue growth or on cost savings, or if it is an AI tool for your customers, measuring it through customer satisfaction is a great way to measure success with your AI initiatives. So some of the key takeaways, you know, the ability to demonstrate AI's value and you know, driving real transformation is going to define the next wave of industry leaders. I mean, we're already seeing statistics coming out from Gartner, OpenAI, you know, surveys that they're running, where mid-market organizations, they're stating that 90% of them are already familiar or using some kind of generative AI tool. So the future, you know, is definitely now, right? It's going to belong to those organizations that don't necessarily have to be on the bleeding edge, but are making decisive actions towards embracing AI in their organization, you know, and aligning their business goals with that embrace of AI. This AI playbook that we talked about today, it lays out what we see as the quickest and most effective steps you can take to build momentum, because that's really what this is all about. With the constant change of features and technology with AI, really just building momentum towards using this technology, and steering it towards your business needs and goals is already going to set you apart from other organizations. We hope that the insights and the experience that we've shared, that we've actually experienced with customers and with ourselves internally, help you lay that foundation so that your AI, let's call it innovation, is sustainable in your organization, and that you can actually find value in it. Time to value is important, but you can find value in these kinds of tools in your org. I think it's also important to recognize that AI adoption means much more than just finding the right use case, what we've been talking about today, beyond the scope of just this playbook and the topics we discuss, building, or at least starting to build, an AI first culture, addressing how to adopt it across your organization. Again, it's going to only benefit you. So, make sure that when you're doing these, or you're having these conversations, it's cross-functional. Again, that was one of the key takeaways that we had when we went through successful AI deployments, is having that cross-functional collaboration, and then aligning your AI initiatives to actual business problems or business needs. Now I will open it up to questions. Scott?
Sure. Let's see. Okay, let me click over to the questions panel here, see what we have that came through. Okay, here's one. Let's see. How much human involvement is required to continually improve productivity apps versus auto learning by the application itself?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So we have there's a term in AI called human in the loop, right? And there's nothing wrong with that type of interaction with AI. Uh, you know, I'm sure the goal would eventually be to remove the human in the loop, but it's not always the best fit for a company. I think getting started with a human either validating what an AI, an AI outcome or what an AI response is giving you, or starting the prompt to give some kind of instructions to AI is the way to go. But just know that, the AI landscape is changing as well. Up until about 2 months ago, agents weren't a thing, right? And now, agents have varying level of complexity. They're able to do autonomous tasks without any type of human interaction. But for what we call productivity AI, the human in the loop is crucial, because you're using that tool for some kind of output that involves you giving it information, right? Setting the stage for either summarizing data or analyzing data. I think you can definitely ask yourself, can this be automated, right? And if you don't know the capabilities of AI, that's what those envisioning sessions are for. We may be able to make something autonomous that you didn't think was possible, but it's definitely varying levels of complexity. But human in the loop is that first stage and that first step, and you can work your way up to completely autonomous tasks.
Okay, please, I encourage everyone to type your questions in the Q&A panel on the interface of the webinar. We do have one more that I have at the moment. It's a question from someone interested in leveraging AI to automate document processing for loan applications. That's an interesting use case. Goes on to ask how they can ensure that the systems are accurate and compliant with financial regulations, such as the Equal Credit Opportunity Act.
Oh, yeah, really specific. That's good. Actually, we've worked on a a MVP for a customer for similar functionality. So good thing about these type of use cases is it's a repeatable process, right? There's usually, we'll say 80% of that ingestion of that document, they're looking for repeatable things. So with AI, you can instruct or guide it or give it directions to follow those repeatable processes. And again, if we were having this conversation 2 months ago, this would have been a little more of a complex project. But with the emergence of agents, it was built for this specific use case. So you can have that agent operate independently and evaluate that document, pushed up against your own requirements. And back to the human in the loop, right? You can have that agent perform that task and then present it to you for review. I will say, fully transparent, that some of these AI technologies are very good at following instructions, but at times they're very good at hallucinating as well too. So through constant tuning, as well as improving the way the user might prompt the AI or how it's instructed, you can get to pretty high percentage of accuracy. But if the trust still isn't there yet, even after testing and piloting, you can still have the human in the loop for validation. And as far as the compliance piece, I know that was the last part of the question. Those compliance bodies, regulations, they're very well defined, which is what AI systems like. So we can feed those defined compliance processes and documentation into the LLM or into the agent, and it can follow those as such.
All right, one more came in. Looks like we've got some time for it. It's about user adoption. That's an interesting question. And the question is, what are some of the strategies that they can use to drive adoption of AI tools? Users are going to be skeptical and resistant, or at least some of them can be skeptical and resistant to change.
That's a good question, and it's always a question that we get on these webinars. I would lean on the productivity side, right? It's what we mentioned in the earlier part of the deck. We called it a prerequisite, but again, that gets users just introduced into the world of AI. And pick your poison, right? If you're a Google Workspace user, if you're a Microsoft 365 user, you use Copilot. There's iterative steps you can take in these environments to introduce your users. You don't have to give them a full-blown Copilot license. They have free versions for them to just use the general retrieval of information type. But again, it gets them introduced to it. Now, I will say that there are great there's great training material out there, even as generic as YouTube. But if you're talking specifically tools, I know that Microsoft 365 Copilot, they have a Copilot Lab site that can actually take users through demos of generative AI. It gives them an entire prompt website of example prompts to use to help them with their day-to-day tasks. We like to make monthly newsletters with top 10 prompts of the week, right, or prompts of the month. Those kinds of things of just exposing your users or your organization to this technology really helps in the adoption. Now, after implementation of specific AI tools, let's say we're talking the document processing tool mentioned earlier, Araya does go through training of that specific tool when we implement it, user and adoption training for that specific tool. And if that isn't enough, then we also partner with companies that is their main jam, is to do adoption and change management with AI. So there's, again, different avenues you can take. I encourage people to do their own research on their personal side, because you'd be surprised on how much AI can help you even in your personal life versus corporate as well.
Thanks, Javi. That's all the questions that have come through for this session so far, so we can move on to wrap it up. So I will thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. We run educational sessions like these at least once a month. In fact, we're holding a webinar next Thursday with our partner Rapid7. We're going to be looking at some interesting things, tactics and techniques that they use to trap bad actors into disclosing the latest methods that they're using to hack into systems. So I'll include more details along with an invitation to that webinar as a follow-up to today's webinar. And we hope to see you next week. If not, please join us for another session that interests you down the road at some point. Until then, we hope you have a great day and enjoy the remainder of the summer. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.